This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of DocNJock Post-Combine. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, look, I'm not going to high stick Adam because for sure the officials would call me for an infraction, take me out of this podcast studio. So we'll talk about what the heck's been happening with the Red Wings. Series against Columbus that left everybody kind of disappointed. A disaster for the NHL on the national stage when you have an officiating blunder of all time that could legitimately cost the Red Wings a chance to be in the postseason. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Combine, recap the wildness that is Indianapolis. The NFL world is crazy. You got reporters trying to beef up on each other and muscle up and have a source off regarding my sources say this and my sources say that. And two dudes that think that, you know, that's the place at a Starbucks to air out their dirty laundry. But before all that, sometimes in life, and it's kind of funny because at 45 years old, you think you got life figured out, you got things going on, and then you scroll through Twitter and you see a report from Channel 7, and it's like, hey, have you received this text from some fake scammer about, you know, paying tolls and being behind? Let us know. And
was it paying a toll or being a troll?
Yeah.
Which
Very
one?
funny, but not funny because, so this is what happened.
Walk me through this. How does this happen? How do you fall for this?
Yeah, well, first of all, the first step is the air of believability. I travel by car a lot. And there are times you're going through and it says,
set the stage. You hate the fly.
Yeah, you got to pay. I hate flying. I'm scared of flying. When you drive, you go through tolls. Some of it's prepaid. Some of it you go through. So I've been on the road so much lately. So they said the way it is, you get a text and you say, hey, you have an unpaid toll. And it's so ridiculous. It's just for $5. So you're like, it's believable. So you go, hey, do you want to pay it now or avoid losing your license? I'm like, okay, they're not going to lose my license. So I'm like, okay, fine, $5 because they sent it a couple times. So I click on it and it takes you to this very crisp website. And here's the part that's okay. I have a bank account where I pay bills out of that's never going to have more than like $80 to like $100 in it. It's just money in, money out to pay bills. So I was like, all right. I put my debit card info in, and it's very professional, very crisp. It has the logo of a state that I was in. I put my bank info in, I put the card in, and then you hit submit, and it freezes. And then you're like, oh, shit. You're like, something's up. And you're like, what happened? And I just closed out, and I'm like, okay, this will be nothing of it. Because 3 hours later, I get a fraud alert from my bank. Someone in Massachusetts tried to go to CVS and pay for their prescription for $75. And it went through. And they tried it 3 times. The first 2 times it didn't go through. The third time it did. And I said, no, I wasn't there. I live in Michigan. Had to go through it all for 20 minutes. And they said, yep, you're going to have to cancel your card. And I said, no. So they got me for $75. They put it back within 35 hours. But I fell victim. Someone got my debit card info and used it within 6 hours to pay for shit. I was like, man, you feel dumb. You feel really stupid. But in the end, you know, if you're going to have a scam like that, I'm glad it's for only like $5, $75 charge, as opposed to if I had put a different card in there, we're going to have a problem. My wife's going to be yelling at me. So I didn't put like I said, in that sense, I got scammed for the least amount of possible. But I've had my identity stolen 3 times, and this is the 4th. And this is like a terrible feeling. You feel dumb, but it's going on all over Michigan. The news is going to investigate it. So I was a victim. Your boy fell and tried to, you know, avoid his license getting taken down. How dumb is that, cuz?
Look, man, these scam artists have gotten much more sophisticated.
Yes.
It's not as janky as it used to be. It's one of those things where you really do have to have a discerning eye. Look, man, I don't know about you, but they will try it over the phone even. So if it's a number that I do not recognize and it's a number that is not associated with anybody that I work with, I don't answer it. I just send it right to voicemail, and if you leave me a message, I'll call you back. If you don't, well, I avoided you. And look, I don't think it's your fault that you got scammed. Good on your bank for being on their toes and catching everything and taking care of you as quickly as they did. That's freaking awesome. But it is really, really tough, man. They are out here. They're hunting for you. Basically, everybody is prey, and they're just a bunch of predators looking to take advantage of you. So just be on your toes, mind your P's and Q's, and be very, very careful with who you give your financial information to. And look, you're not the first guy to get scammed. You're not going to be the last guy to get scammed. I'm in the same boat as you, very similar. I've had my identity stolen a couple of times. I had to have been at a Kroger that was off of 12 Mile in Halstead, probably about 6-7 years ago. And I stopped in there to pick up an energy drink and to pick up a snack before I went and worked at the radio station. And the very next day, I'm checking my bank account. I'm like, man, how come? What is going on with my account? All of my money from my checking account and all of my money from my savings account were stolen. It was pulled out of my account. Somebody swiped my ATM card, and I had to go through, file a police report. I had to call Kroger, work with their security team to get video footage for the police, and they had to go and try to find, it was a girl who did it. I had to go try to find this girl who sat there and cloned my card and was able to access all of my bank account information. It was absolutely nuts because I started freaking out. I had bills that were coming out and that were due, and I had zeros in my bank account, like in my checking account, because I used my ATM card to buy a snack. So, like I said, not the first, not going to be the last. It's a bitch when it happens, but like I said, good on your bank for taking care of you as quickly as they did, and just be a little bit more mindful, be a little bit more skeptical is best advice, man. It's one of those things whenever it looks a little bit fishy or feel a little uncomfortable, or if I'm ever like, did I actually do this? Is this legit? I always try to delve a little bit deeper and try to cross a couple T's, dot a couple of I's. But man, don't feel bad. It happens to the best of us, brother.
Yeah, it's a wild feeling, and you're like, man. Luckily, like I said, it wouldn't be happy too much, so it's a good situation for me to kind of say, hey, mind your P's and Q's and do the things you got to do to be successful. So it's disappointing. But I think that there's an opportunity to learn every time. Be careful, and if you're going to put your information out there, handle it in a way that can be not so detrimental. Don't put your big money cards in your situation where, hey, don't put your checking account, your personal savings account online.
Yes.
Bill paying, okay, no problem. But take a lesson from the doc. Don't be dumb. Save your information, and hey, just use a prepaid toll, and you never have to worry about someone saying that you didn't. But they use a good number, $6.99. You're like, whatever. If you say, hey, whatever, but when that shit glitches, you're like, oh, the moment you're sitting on a Saturday, you're like, what the hell just happened? But
there's a part where your heart ends up in your asshole, and you've got this cold sweat running down your back, and you're like, oh no, what just happened? Did I just do this?
Yep. And so, cause the good thing is that the sports world is a situation in which it's interesting times with the Pistons and Red Wings and Lions. You realize, okay, for the Red Wings, they were on the stage, and I think you and I are probably going to feel the same way, eerily similar to last year with that Ottawa series. That Columbus series was not good. Goaltender Cam Talbot looked anxious, in the outdoor venue. The play wasn't as good, and it's never good, never, ever good when the head man is having to call out the captain saying, let's put out an APB. He's not there. Where is he? Where's Dylan? I was like, is that Adam or is that Todd McClellan? Oh, my God, it was eerie. It was like the coach is coming out going, we can't win and get 2 points if the captain's not there and doing anything. And I was like, man, not good. And we're at the point now, 24 hours away from the deadline. What's your concern level after that series? Clearly, they didn't play good enough to earn 4 points, but I felt like, the call, the high sticking was one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. The whole world saw it, and it was embarrassing at the highest level to have that happen and not to get called, where everybody in the world should have seen that was a high sticking penalty, resulted in a goal, and the Wings are kind of licking their wounds a little bit here, as we've seen in the last 7 days.
Look, it really feels like with the Detroit Red Wings, it feels like it's Groundhog's Day, right? Like, what's the difference between this year and last year in that Ottawa series, and the year before that with the Florida Panthers series? What's the difference? The Red Wings are in the same spot. You control your own destiny, and you can really take advantage of it, yet you let these games slip through your fingers. you are basically the same exact team that you were last year and the year before that, and that's just not good enough. You didn't make the playoffs, and I have a high level of concern that you're not going to make the playoffs this year. I put it in our rundown. I really feel like this team is that abusive lover. Just as soon as you start to compliment them, just as soon as you start to give them nice things and you praise them, next thing you know, they're pushing you down a flight of stairs and they're bouncing your head off of a coffee table. And they're telling you, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I love you. I won't ever do it again. Just to do it again. It's been done time and time again every single year now. I'm not really sure what has to change with this team. I don't know what the wake-up call has to be. I really thought with Dylan Larkin going and playing in the Four Nations face-off, I really thought that would maybe help inspire him so he could come back and help inspire these guys, right? Lucas Raymond played in as well. You had guys up and down your roster contributing on that thing. And to me, all that happened was you came back with tired legs. That doesn't really work. You got to play with some of the best guys in the world, and you actually got to play for something meaningful for the first time in your career. That should help motivate you to help motivate these guys to get up for these games. These were two big games against Columbus. Massive games, right? You were in that first wild card spot, and you had a chance to start to leapfrog some teams and really get yourself ahead. And instead, all you did was you shot yourself in the foot. And now you're in the second wild card spot. You're trying to fend off the New York Rangers. You're trying to fend off the Ottawa Senators. You're trying to fend off the Montreal Canadiens. Buffalo's just behind them. So, like, you've got all these teams now nipping at your heels when really and truly you could have put some distance between you and everybody else in the back of the wild card race, and you could have really have made some strides at trying to catch up to Tampa Bay. And now you're in the passenger seat. It just, to me, it is rinse and repeat with this team, which leads me to this trade deadline that we've got coming up on Friday. You're going to know everything you need to know about what Steve Yzerman and what this team is, with the moves that he makes or does not make. If Steve Yzerman doesn't go out and make a meaningful trade during this trade period, I don't know what to tell you, Red Wing fans. I don't know what to tell you. I think we all need to go down to Little Caesars Arena and we need to march around with pitchforks and torches and ask for Steve Yzerman's resignation, or have maybe Chris Ilitch fire him. I don't know. Because if you're not going to do anything now in a preseason where you told us that this season is a year where we're going to make big strides, we're going to be a playoff contender, we're going to start winning meaningful games, only to be in the same spot you were last year, what the hell has changed, man? And look, if you're able to facilitate a big-time trade, right? And we talked about this last week. I feel their big issue is on defense. I feel like they need to add a top four defenseman. Every time I watch games, you've got defensemen getting skated around. You've got odd man rushes, putting goaltenders in bad spots. You brought up goaltending. I'm not going to hate on you if you can go out there and find a goaltender. Go for it. What I'll tell you is, if you are in a playoff chase, good luck getting a good goaltender. It's very, very difficult. I think your best chance to get a goaltender is probably Sebastian Cossa coming up. But who knows if that's going to happen, because it really does feel like it's very similar to when Ken Holland was here. You like him overripe before you bring him up. So he could be down in the minors for another 2 years. Who the hell knows? But you need to, I feel, add a defenseman, and it has to be a big name, and it has to be impactful, and it has to be meaningful. And you do need a top six forward. You lost Andrew Kopp, who I feel like was kind of a nothing burger, but you see, if it's not Larkin, if Raymond doesn't have the support, if it's not overtime, you're not getting a whole ton out of Kane. DeBrincat is hot and cold. So you have problems all over with your top forwards. So you need to add another bullet to that chamber. So you've got to go out there and you've got to get a top six forward as well. You've got prospects up and down your roster. You've got guys in your minor league system, guys who, like we said, are on the verge or should be ready to come up. If now is not the time, when the hell is the time? You need to trade some of those pieces and go get some guys who are going to make a difference and help you make a solid run in the playoffs and possibly be able to do something next year with those same exact guys. You need to add to your roster because your roster just isn't getting it done. And I'm getting really, really frustrated being a Red Wings fan because it feels like we're not really advancing. We're not doing anything meaningful. We're not doing anything that is necessarily different because, like I said, this is the same thing that happened last year and the same thing that happened the year before. I don't know what's different. Is the thing that's different you have Todd McClellan? Okay, cool. I mean, you want to sell me on your head coach? Great. Yeah, he had a really, really nice run when he first got here. That new coach Cologne, I think it's wearing off. And when it wears off, you're left with the talent that you've got on your roster. So you need to figure out a way to bolster that. You need to trade some of your prospects. You need to trade some of your draft capital. You need to make some moves, and you need to get some guys in here to shake up this lineup and have guys actually help you out because what you're getting, it just isn't good enough. Does what I'm saying about the trade deadline make sense to you? Do you feel like it's now or never for Steve Yzerman? I feel like we've been saying that for the last 2 years, but does it really feel like this is a year where it's really and truly make or break? Steve's got to go make a move.
Yeah, no doubt, right? It's one of those situations where I'm not so certain. Look, they don't grow on trees, but it just feels like if you're only going to make one move, I would make it for a physical defenseman, like somebody that can move bodies so that your guys are not getting pushed around. I just think that when the Wings don't play good, they don't play as physical, they make a little bit too many mistakes, their neutral zone play gets weak, and then they get out physical. Like they get bumped off the puck, they don't win their battles in the zones, and it looks pretty clear that they're a finesse team that sometimes if you're another team, you don't mind taking liberties with a Dylan Larkin or a Rasmussen or one of your skill position players because who's really going to beat your ass? Is it going to be Seider? Okay, you can wait till he's off the ice. The other four defensemen aren't going to really rattle you to the point where you're going to be messed up. And so I just think that this Red Wing team is one in which they can ill afford to have a lackadaisical performance, especially in a series where, man, the Eastern Conference is it's so tough to try and accomplish those 2 points every single night. In this stretch of games, too, I would be surprised if the deadline passes and no moves are made. I think that you just need to acquire a couple of guys, maybe on expiring deals, individuals that can help. Goaltending, I don't think you're going to upgrade. I think you just got to roll with Talbot or Lyon, and you got to decide who's the one that you're going to trust in the playoffs. I think it'll probably be Talbot, but absolutely, I think that it's critical that a message needs to be sent like, hey, look, we like what you're doing, but at the same token, that every team at the deadline needs to kind of round out, like get better. And nobody's going to hate on Steve Yzerman if he lets go of one of the assets that he's acquired. He's got so many. So make the move, help this team get some momentum back, and realize that it's teetering. It's teetering because you're close, and you're now in that second wild card spot. You could easily be falling out, and it's crunch time. So similarly with the Pistons, I do think that the trade deadline, the lack of moves that they made, but acquiring a depth piece was good enough to send the signal, hey, we're interested. And I think if you bypass that, if the Wings bypass that, I think that you could see an epic collapse. And let's just hope that doesn't happen. Let's just hope that, with each stretch of games, that each 2-point opportunity is there to play better, a wake-up call for the captain to, hey, take reins of this team and build on the momentum from the Four Nations Cup. And let's get after it, because if this season goes by the wayside and there's no playoffs, it's disaster. I think the approval rating for Steve Yzerman will go down. You'd have a lot more people kind of jumping off the bandwagon, and the belief that this program and regime will amount to anything might take a massive dip. Now, turning our attention to the NFL and the recently completed combine, I know you were under the weather. Did it make it so that you watched it more? Because you and I were texting going, man, a lot of the top guys don't want to do this anymore. A lot of the prospects are like, I'm good. Look at my tape. Maybe I'll run. Maybe I'll run, but maybe I'll skip the workout. Maybe I'll skip the run and just do a couple things and then I'm out. It was like one of those a la carte situations where the prospects were like, looking at this, it ain't going to really help me. People watch. It's entertaining. I ain't getting no money. All they're going to do is just come in here and take my blood and test me and ask me a bunch of weird questions. Let me just do that part. The workout part, hey, you all come to me and let me show you to my crib and not work out. I get why, because it has the feel of an event that the prospects don't care about anymore, especially if you're a first rounder. And I think the agents are telling the players, yo, you could be in a controlled environment or you could have some weird thing happen where it's all negative. So really the combine is just a bunch of dudes that are looking to go from the 4th round to the 2nd round. And while it was great to be there for the media sessions, I think I made the right call, because what I did was I went for the media sessions. I went Monday night. Monday was a social night. Hung out with a lot of the writers and hung out with a bunch of NFL people that were just buzzing around this little small area. So then Tuesday was work day all day long. Just, hey, here's Dan Campbell, here's Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, the 2 coordinators, here's content. And then Wednesday was the edge rushers. Let's just sit all day and watch them talk and put out some videos and content. And then Wednesday afternoon, I drove home. And I felt like, man, am I doing the job right? Am I doing this properly? Like, everyone's staying? And then I get home Thursday and I'm like, oh, yeah, I got through 2 hours. I'm doing updates and I'm like, I'm bored out of my mind. Who loves this? Like, who sits there and enjoys this day in, day out? Like, this guy ran a 4.89. He's got
Rich Eisen does.
It was
Rich Eisen's the guy who loves it.
Yeah. But I was like, I'm trying. I'm like, this is my job. But I'm like, you know what? It's just an aspect. The draft is an aspect. I know that there's a lot of people that can share that information. So I peeked at it. I just couldn't intently watch the draft to that degree. Because how did you take it in? And I feel like the combine's it has jumped the shark. I think that it's outdated. It's, really something that doesn't need to be televised anymore.
It's messed up. We've been doing this podcast now for 11 years, maybe going on 12. And when we first started, even before we first started, I loved the combine.
Right.
Combine was one of my most favorite events of the year. I thought it was absolutely great. And as we've kind of advanced, and really and truly, I take this back to when Brad Holmes took over this team. I think that maybe that second year when Brad Holmes was general manager, I still watched intently. I still was kind of dialed in. But as Brad Holmes has continued to be general manager of the Detroit Lions, I've kind of have stepped away from watching the combine, at least as closely as I used to. Now, I kind of feel like things that have influenced my decision-making in it is, a lot of it is, like you said, you have these top guys who aren't showing up for it, who have zero interest in doing it. And it becomes, with the guys who are doing it, it becomes very a la carte. I'm going to run the 40, but I'm not going to do the bench press. Or I'm going to do the high jump, but I'm not going to do the 3-cone drill. I'm going to field questions and answer questions, but I'm not going to compete in any of the drills. And it just kind of becomes this thing where they're kind of picking and popping. So when you're trying to compare players, at least athletically, it becomes a little bit difficult, because you're like, okay, well, I've got this guy who ran the 40, but this guy didn't. I've got this guy who did the 3-cone drill, and he was really, really good at it. But I've seen the tape on this guy, and it looks like he should be really good at it, but he chose not to do it. So trying to draw these comparisons and trying to draw these conclusions, good luck. Really and truly, good luck. What you need one of those detective boards with the yarn and the push pins, and you need stuff kind of drawn all over the place, and you've got to try to figure it out that way. And so my love for the combine has really waned, but Brad Holmes for me is probably the major reason, because you look at what the Lions have done. You have to remember, the draft for the longest time was the Detroit Lions Super Bowl. The draft was the biggest day of the year. And this speaks to the draft even. And we can maybe talk about this when the draft rolls around. I enjoy the draft. I love watching the draft. I will sit and I will take time out of my day to watch the draft. But I no longer hold the draft in as much importance as I once did. And it's because the Detroit Lions are no longer drafting in those top 5 spots. The Detroit Lions are now drafting later on in the draft, and you've got a competent general manager who is making moves that make you scratch your head at the time of the move, where you're kind of like, what are we doing? Why? Who are we taking? And you're kind of like a little bit confused. You got to start doing a little bit more research on a guy that you didn't even think that they were going to take, and you didn't think they were going to take him in the first round. And it becomes a little bit perplexing, because there are guys that I openly questioned the pick of Kirby Joseph to you that year that Brad Holmes took him. I said, what the hell are we doing? Why are we taking this guy? This crumb bum out of Illinois. What the hell is going on? And you're like, he's actually pretty decent. I was like, bullshit. There was this guy, and this guy, and this guy. I don't even remember who the hell was there. But it was obvious Kirby Joseph was a really solid pick. He was a fantastic pick. But Brad Holmes kind of does his own thing. Brad Holmes operates in his own way. And look, the one thing you know about Brad Holmes, the thing that he values athleticism. So if you've got a high RAS score, there's a good chance that you're probably going to be drafted by Brad Holmes, or those are guys that you should probably look at because Brad Holmes has a propensity of drafting guys who are very, very athletic because he likes having the versatility with guys who can run quick, jump high, and are mobile and flexible enough in their positions where they can play other roles. So those guys will get drafted. But other than that, man, the way Brad Holmes does it, it's just different. It's different than anything that we've ever seen before. So it becomes harder for you to cast this broad net and try to learn everything on everybody, right? You can get a little bit familiar with a couple of people, but it's not the same. It's not what it used to be. And it was one of those things where when you're drafting in the top 5, top 10, you could really narrow it down, right? You could look at 15, maybe 20 guys, and you could be like, okay, this guy's going to be gone, this guy's going to be gone, this guy's going to be gone. This is a group of players. There are these 5 guys. They should be there. And you could really dial in on who you wanted them to draft. When you're drafting at 25, 26, 28, 30, it becomes much more impossible to really narrow down who those guys should be that you think Brad Holmes is going to take. Because Brad Holmes will take a guy that you had a 3rd-round grade on. He'll take him in the 1st round, and the dude will turn out to be a Pro Bowl player. And that's just how good Brad Holmes is at drafting, you know? So, I mean, unless you're a defensive lineman, there's a really good chance that you're going to be a very good player if Brad Holmes takes you. If you're a defensive lineman, coin flip. We'll see what happens. But for me, my love of the combine, and look, you can hear it in my voice. I've got snot running down my face right now. I've been sick the entire weekend. And I didn't make the combine a priority to watch. I should have been on the couch the entire weekend. Instead, I was kind of on the floor running around with my daughter and trying to play with her because she was dealing with a little bit of illness too. She was the one who got me sick. But I didn't make it a priority. I ended up going back. I went to NFL.com. I went through, I read some stuff. I watched a bunch of videos. You can go on YouTube and you can catch all the clips of all the guys doing any of the events that they chose to do. But again, it becomes hard because not everybody's doing the events. And the top guys that you want to see, they're waiting for their pro day. So if you want to see them, you can go to their pro day. But it becomes difficult to kind of take it all in. And it really has, I feel like, hurt the event itself.
Yeah. I think the live broadcast it's not conducive for that. And just as you were talking, I'm thinking, in this digital age, they should just sell it separately. Like, hey, here's $250. You get access to all this platform where, make it some fun. Like, hey, okay, you see Jihad Campbell, you like him, you push a button, and it just pops up 40 dash, cone drill, and you can just a la carte pick players to watch film on. And instead of spending 8 hours with talk, I think the NFL would save money. You just tape it and just upload it 2 hours later, and you have the players work out at 10 a.m. and boom, by 3 o'clock, all the stuff is up, and you can start. Okay, by 3 o'clock, you have a countdown. You can have some shows, talk about what people like, some anticipation, some behind the scenes, and then boom, I can just start pushing buttons and go, okay, I want to see the 40 of this guy. Boom, I push a button and it shows up a la carte. And instead of spending 12 hours on a weekend, you can spend like 45 minutes and just going through it and just sell it separately because it's not a TV event. I mean, the people that go there, they don't time it and tell you. You hear the oohs and ahs, and you hear guys screaming at the top of their lungs, but it's not, all the reporters don't sit in Lucas Oil Stadium. They sit in the media room and watch it on TV. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it's a TV event. It's just not. So that's what I think you and I was reflective on, and the same thing. We'd plan our whole shows and go after it at the Combine and talk about it, but now it's mostly a PR event for athletes to hobnob with teams.
There were times where we would record shows and we would have the Combine on while we were recording shows, and we would stop our show in the middle of it to talk about what was going on with the Combine. It was an integral part of what we did and what we do. And it feels like it has kind of gone by the wayside. Yeah. It doesn't feel like it is the same thing.
It's basically oversaturated and overdone. It's too much. Mm-hmm. It's too much content. Like, you can't air. They're airing the whole thing, start to finish. Like, listen, no disrespect, but I don't need to see the 15th best prospect at defensive tackle that's going to be a 6th-round pick running and doing his thing. Like, you just need it where the top guys do their thing and work out and do stuff. But see, here's the problem. And I think, too, indirectly, the general managers have killed it. They've said, yeah, it's there, but I look at film, and it's just basically to kind of cross off, like, okay, we thought he was fast. Yeah, he's fast. Or we thought he's slow. Yeah, he's slow. It's a confirmation tool. It's not oh, my goodness. But there were some guys, though. Listen, you and I understood. I think it's the same with everybody, that it's just too much. But there were some guys that I thought really kind of highlighted that this class is deep in the trenches. And I feel like for the Detroit Lions, it feels like to me at number 28 that they're going to go offensive line or defensive line. And I would be okay with that.
Agree.
I feel like you don't need skill position in this draft. You need to focus on defensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, and cornerback. And I think you can get a lot of good players in this draft. And I think 4 of the 5-6 picks in a row could be on defense. And I think you could get a wide receiver later. Or if Brad wants to shock everybody, you go skill position in the first round. But I doubt it. I think with what the needs are, I think that we can confirm that the defense and what can happen along the defensive line, you could be okay with targeting one of those players for the Lions in 2025.
Yeah, look, the big thing that I took out of what I've seen from the combine and the stuff that I've read since the combine is this is a draft where there's a lot of big bodies and a lot of big, strong, physical, athletic big bodies. To me, the way this draft sets up is it really does benefit and behoove the Lions to use as much draft capital in it, because if you look at the spots where they are weak, we've talked about it. You need to revamp your offensive line. You need to add pieces and help Aiden Hutchinson along the defensive line. You need to add in the secondary with your cornerbacks. That is what this draft is set up as. This is what the predominant players, the predominant high-end players are. You're going to have a guy or 4 in this draft that have first-round grades that are going to slip into that second round. There are going to be guys that should go in the top 10 that should be there for the Lions when they're drafting at 28. This draft sets up because it is so deep with edge rushers and defensive tackles and just overall D linemen and offensive linemen, where there's going to be somebody that the Detroit Lions are going to add and help bolster their trenches, because it's just the way this draft is. If you look at the quarterbacks in this class, usually quarterbacks are the guys who are going in the top 3 picks, right? And people are jockeying around trying to get up there so they can get their future franchise quarterback. There might be one quarterback that goes in the top 10, and there's a good possibility that you could have one quarterback go in the first round. I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but I'm just saying leave the door open because there's the possibility that could happen. So the way this draft sets up, it really does behoove the Lions to, you're going to hate me for this.
Go ahead.
Don't trade your first round pick. Don't trade your second round pick. Save those picks. Use them in this draft. I know we talk about Myles Garrett, and I would love to have Myles Garrett. I absolutely would. And if you could tell me that you could take your first round pick this year and get Myles Garrett, I would tell you go for it, because you got a Hall of Famer, and there's no guarantees that you're going to be able to draft a Hall of Famer. But what I will tell you is, if you need cap flexibility, and that's what Brad Holmes was basically talking about. He was talking about how, we're poor, we don't have any money. We need to be able to save money because we got to be able to sign guys like Aiden Hutchinson, and we've got to be able to sign our own guys because the purse strings are tight. We can't spend the money. We can't afford it. If you need cap flexibility like that, here's the deal. There's enough talent in this draft where you should be able to uncover somebody who should be a Pro Bowl caliber player. There's a ton of talent along the offensive and defensive lines in this draft. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that you could come away with from this. And I think the other big thing is there was a bit of a release with who the Lions were interviewing as far as players go. And I think we can kind of get a sense of where the Lions are planning to go with their draft. It looks as though they have the same mindset. They are looking at big bodies. They're looking at guys along that defensive line. They're looking at guys in that linebacking core. And I think when they're in their linebacking core, they're probably more outside rushing linebackers and they're looking at wide receivers, and they're looking at cornerbacks. That was what the predominant interviews that were released, the information that we got, said that the Lions were interested in. And I think that bodes well for this team. What was your sense on that little bit of a snippet where this is what the Lions are? These are the players the Lions are. They didn't tell you who the players were, but they were like, these are the positions that the Lions have been interviewing. What was your sense on when that information kind of came out, and what did that kind of tell you about their draft board? Does it tell you that it kind of aligns with what we've been talking about? And is there maybe some kind of outlier that we should maybe be looking for? Because I was a little surprised that they interviewed as many wide receivers as they did.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a situation in which, here's what the Lions like. They like gritty guys. It was reported that one of the questions Dan Campbell likes to ask is, what does grit mean to you? And, he's looking for opportunities for people to say, hey, I struggled with this and I battled and had an opportunity to get back. And that's what they want. They want football guys, and there's opportunities for these athletes to prove to the coaches that, hey, we love football, we're smart, we can take some information and adapt it in a way that the Lions can use. And here's what they like, too. The Lions like versatile players. They don't want just a, 3-tech defensive lineman that just stands there. They want somebody that can, move inside, 4-tech, play the edge, stand up, do some things, be versatile. A guard that can also be a tackle and can swing out. Some versatility makes it so that you have a better chance to be looked at by the Lions. And I do think that the athleticism, you brought up a great point. The RAS score will be very key. And also, too, it's not unwise to say, let's look at Georgia, Mikel Williams. Let's look at Alabama, Tyler Booker. Let's look at Malachi Moore, the safety. Let's look at Alabama and Georgia, where Brad Holmes loves to live and travel. And all the players are like, yeah, bring Malachi home. Yeah, all the players are like, I'd love to play in Detroit. That's a great play. You know what I mean? The Alabama and Detroit kind of are like, one-way track there where the Crimson Tide are like, we got a home in Detroit. The Detroit Pride are doing their thing. And the Detroit Crimson Tide are out there having the opportunity to shine. So I like that because that's where the best players go. And that's something that you can value so much. But also, too, I thought that, very rarely do you make decisions and you're like, oh, this is really good. I saw the Texas offensive line in person. I think I said it here on the podcast. I'm like, oh, my God. The Texas offensive and defensive line were pro style. And I got to see the massive amount of talent that was on Texas. I saw Josh Connerly with the Oregon Ducks. I saw the massive amount of talent that was featured from those teams that came to the big house. And I was like, well, yeah, too. I told you that I went there to see Michigan lose, which was great. But at the same token, you got a chance to see, these guys are athletic. These guys are so different. And also, too, you go, okay, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, they're okay. Josiah Stewart, I can see this defensive line. I can see why there was some talent there. But which really goes to show you, if you really look at it, you got 3 defensive linemen because at Michigan that were there. You guys had such a brutal offense. You had an NFL caliber defensive line and a all-world cornerback that kind of just dealt with injuries. So there was a chance to be able to do some more than what they were able to do. But just like in life, if you don't have a quarterback, you got nothing. So hopefully Michigan learns that lesson quickly, and hopefully their investment that they made gets them back on track. But with the Lions, I'm comfortable. Is there a player that you say, well, you know what, a Jihad Campbell or a Mike Green or somebody that you say, hey, I don't mind if Brad swings to go up? A lot of people are thinking that there's a chance they could go down and get some more capital. There's a good chance of that. There's a draft analyst that went on the Lions website. If you want to go check it out, we featured it on Lions on SI 2. You can watch the video. But I do think that this is an opportunity for, just like every year, to move up, stay, or move down. But I think the wise thing could be to move down into the second round, add another pick, and really solidify with depth what's going on in your defense and secondary.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. So looking at the way this draft kind of breaks down, and I kind of laid it out a little bit, right? There's going to be guys that are going to fall into that second round who have first-round grades. If you can acquire more second-round picks, I would move back. Let somebody else move up, take whomever. You get those second-round picks, and you can go and really revamp and really add to this defensive line and add to that offensive line and really in one draft retool both sides of your line and buy yourself another 4 years where you really have to make a decision and give yourself that cap flexibility that Brad Holmes likes. So very similar to you, I would look at moving back into the second round if possible. Look, there's a ton of talent in this draft, right? Especially high up. You could move up. I don't think the Lions are going to do that. I know they've done it in the past. I just don't see them doing it. What I see them doing is maybe waiting, seeing how things kind of come to them, and maybe there's a guy like a James Pierce, right, out of Tennessee. There was a report by, I believe it was Walter Football, that basically just a character assassinates this guy. And he seems like he's a dude who's got a high motor, seems like he's a high leverage guy. Seems like if he's motivated and when he's motivated, the guy should be an all-world talent. So if your culture's strong enough and you believe in your coaches and everybody believes in Dan Campbell enough, this might be a guy that slips to you in the second round and you can pick him up. You add him. You add a guy like a Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. I mean, right there, that's your new edge rotation, right? It's Aiden Hutchinson, it's Jack Sawyer, and then you're rotating this dude, James Pearson, and all of a sudden, that looks dramatically different than what you had last year. You got a lot of young talent there. You got a dude who's got a motor that runs for days. You got a guy who is incredibly intense in Jack Sawyer. And then you've got a guy who really and truly could be the best of all of them as long as he stays motivated. And I think you have a head coach who can motivate just about anybody. I mean, we talk about Dan Campbell making us want to run through walls. So I'm pretty sure your head coach can motivate this guy. So I think moving back would probably be the smart thing to do. Acquire some more picks for that second and possibly that third round and see what falls to you. See what you get. Because there's a ton of dudes along the offensive and defensive line that can really help make this team dramatically different and better next season.
And as we were talking, interesting just NFL nugget, Jonah Jackson from the Rams gets dealt to the Bears, and the Bears are desperate. They're taking on his whole salary. So it was a flop from the Lions going to the Rams, and it just was a injury-plagued year, and it wasn't what the Rams thought it would be. It's going to be interesting to see if Ben Johnson can potentially recoup and get Jonah Jackson playing at a better level. What did you make of Ben Johnson talking his shit about Jared Goff at the Combine? It seems like he was taking some interesting comments there.
Mm-hmm.
I know we touched on it, but now with more context, do you think that it was much ado about nothing, or you just say, you know what, this is good banter between people? Because I like the fact that the more you think about it, the more you realize, man, Lions fans truly hate Ben Johnson, and it just feels like every word out of his mouth pissed everybody off. And then I love the rivalry. Now he pinched a couple coaches. He got Jonah Jackson. I'm loving the opportunity now for this rivalry with the Lions and Bears as it's going to shake out. I think it's going to be really good moving forward. I think that, too, with the division and the way things are shaking out. I love the fact that Ben was poking the bear and now is going to have to answer for his squad. But I don't think the offensive line's good enough. And the more I think about it, I think Caleb Williams, even in year 2, is going to develop, but not to the degree where I think he's going to be as good as Jared Goff. So I'll ask you this real fast before we start talking about Jameson Williams. Do you see the ceiling for Caleb Williams being a little bit higher than Jared Goff's? Or do you see maybe that his athleticism gives him an opportunity, and let's build upon Ben Johnson's love of mobility?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Caleb develops into something that Lions got to worry about?
I think his ceiling is higher just because he's a little bit more athletic, right? Like, Caleb Williams is a guy who can run fast, jump high, throw the ball hard. You know, like, those are all things. When you think about Jared Goff, it's not really those things, right? Jared Goff doesn't really run fast. He doesn't really jump high. And we've questioned his arm strength for years now, right? And I think the arm strength thing has kind of been put to rest. But when you compare these two side by side, one looks more like a physical, athletic guy, right? One looks like he could pick up a basketball right now and go and slam dunk on just about anybody. The other guy looks like he might be an accountant, you know? So I think the ceiling is higher because the physical gifts and the physical tools are a little bit more abundant for Caleb Williams. That being said, Jared Goff has shown you time and time again, mentally, the guy understands the game. He is precise, and he has the ability to carve you up. And he understands, and he's got the mental breakdown to where if he makes a mistake, he's got the ability to shake it off and come back and then throw a dime. And I don't think we've seen that with Caleb Williams yet. I don't think we've seen it where he's had the game on his shoulders and he's thrown into triple coverage, turned over the ball. Defense has been able to get it back for him and him go down and win that football game. We've seen that with Jared Goff. We've seen Jared Goff turn the ball over 5 times and come out and light up Houston. So I think the mental makeup of Jared Goff puts him above a guy like Caleb Williams. But I think Caleb Williams' physical tools are just not tangible for a guy like Jared Goff, if that makes any sense.
Understood. Yeah, and I look at it like now we turn our attention to it's going to get crazy next week because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday is the legal tampering period. I do think there's going to be action for Carlton Davis, Derek Barnes, Kevin Zeitler. I think some of the Lions are going to get moved on from. I think that my early prediction would be Carlton Davis leaves, Derek Barnes stays, Ifeatu Melifonwu leaves, Kevin Zeitler gone. I think that Levi Onwuzurike gone. I think Barnes and some opportunities for contracts for Carlton Davis has a chance to return depending on the need. But I think that monies are going to be allocated, whether it be the 5th-year option for Jameson Williams, long-term contracts for Kirby Joseph and Aiden Hutchinson. I think the Lions are going to be relatively quiet in terms of big swings in free agency, but role players and, maybe, cornerbacks ages 30 and up, a Rasul Douglas from the Bills, or maybe some reserve. If you want to go check out affordable options, you can check it out at Lions on SI. I think it's not going to be a free agency frenzy for the Lions. There will be moves, but I don't think it's going to be crazy when you realize how much money's got to be spent. And as it shakes out, we'll learn more next week. We'll have more of a chance to react to some of the moves that are made. But I think that the biggest question mark is going to be, I think Aiden's going to get 40. Kirby's going to be amongst the highest paid safeties. I do think that you recognize that one of the biggest decisions, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, do you give Jameson Williams the 5th-year option? Or do you say, because that's $18 million, and you have him under control until 2026 if you want to trade him? Or do you say, you know what, play out your deal this year and show us what you got, and let's not do anything, let's not commit, because that's not a good sign. I think you might, in this day and age, end up awakening a diva mentality if you just tell him, hey, if you basically don't pick up his option, you're telling him that, metaphorically or, subliminally that you're not interested in him. And I think he would take that personally, and I think it would be upsetting the apple cart. So I do think they will pick it up, and I think that'll be a nice gesture to say, hey, we stuck with you. We like your antics. We like your game, but tighten up the ship, and let's get after it.
You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they don't have to actually pick up the option until the beginning of May. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep, he's got time.
Okay. So this is what I would do. All right. And like I said, when you looked at the interviews that they conducted at the Combine, I was really surprised that wide receiver was in as much abundance as it was.
Because maybe Tim Patrick could get offers too. That's why.
I totally understand. But I also believe that you could possibly move on from Jameson Williams. I feel like you could be looking at possibly adding a guy who could be his replacement in the near future. Here's the thing. He has shown that he is mentally very young. He has made a lot of mistakes, and this team has been incredibly patient with him and has gone to bat for him time and time again. I would not be so quick to give him his 5th-year option. I would probably drag my feet until the very final day, and I would pull him in the office and I'd be like, look, and that's if I feel like there weren't other options that we needed to address or other options that were possibly a better replacement for him. And I would pull him in the office and I'd be like, look, we're going to sign this and we're going to do this. This is you have a year to prove your worth to us. You have a year to go out there and show that you're not a knucklehead, to show that you are as good as what you've put on the field, and to show that you are worth every dollar that you want in this big money contract that's coming up. go out there, earn it. And that's the conversation I had. It'd be just a very real life conversation with them. Be like, basically, you do dumb shit. I need you not to do dumb shit for a year, and we can come back and revisit this contract with you. I feel like he is still a liability, man. So I would not be so quick to give him $15 million and say, hey, let's go have a good year. I'd make him sweat it out just because I don't feel like he's deserved it, man. Like, that sucks to say because
there's a risk that you're not willing to give.
Exactly. And that's what it is right there. That's it right there. You spoke it much more eloquently than me. That is it right there. He is an incredible player on the field. Incredible. The things he has the ability to do, it's awesome. But with that awesomeness, there comes this level of boneheadery where you're just like, dude, what the hell are you doing? What are you thinking? What are you thinking driving around with a gun that's not registered? What are you thinking trying to get your brother to fucking take the blame for it after you already said it was yours? Like, what are you doing hanging out over there on the east side of Detroit handing out $100 bills? Like, what are you doing? Like, don't put yourself in bad spots. You know, like you and I were brought up similar. You know, a spot's not the best. Just don't go to it.
All right.
Just don't go to it. Don't put yourself in harm's way if you don't have to.
Wait a minute, cuz. Wait a second. Are you the podcaster that's talking all that shit about Shedeur Sanders? That's like, he looks like a brand guy. He looks like a guy that is going to dip. I don't like the fact that he's got all this cash in his pocket beforehand. Is that you talking all that shit? Miss Josina Anderson's like, I am resentful of this quarterback coach that is telling everybody that Shedeur Sanders is a guy that is not worthy. Real fast before we get out of here, I respect everything you're saying. Yeah, the Doc and Jock risk meter elevated with Jameson Williams, but we love his talent. We just got to see the making sure that he minds his P's and Q's.
I just need to see him grow up, man. I need to see him grow up is what it is.
Yep, he has to mature. Real fast, a couple players I'm curious to get your bust meter on regarding, do you think they'll be good players? Abdul Carter, potential number 1 pick, but got injured at the combine.
He makes me nervous. I think he has incredible talent, but he could be a guy that could be injury prone, and it could just not work out. So bust meter, we'll say 1 to 10. I'm going to say bust meters probably 6.5, 7.
Okay, mine's lower. So bust or baller. I think he's going to be a baller. I like his pass rush moves. Penn State, I think, taught him very well. I think some things are going to go well. Travis Hunter, you think he's going to be a bust or a baller?
I think he has all the physical capabilities. Like, he is a freak show. I think it'll depend on what team he goes to, and I think it'll depend on what position he plays. I think if he's utilized more like a Percy Harvin, I think he's got the ability to be a baller. I think if he's utilized as a cornerback, because I feel like he's a little bit undersized, I think he might be a bust. Also, dudes are bigger, stronger, faster in the NFL. So I'm going to say I think he's so physically gifted. I'm going to say he's more baller than he is bust.
Baller, agreed. A couple more. And definitely check out at Detroit Podcast, as I threw out with Christian a wild trade up that I think is just for entertainment purposes, but very funny to think about. So look for that soon as it makes its way through the video hopper. 2 more. Cam Ward, bust or baller? Bust.
Yeah, I just don't see it, man. Here's the deal. I don't like the quarterbacks in this draft.
Me neither.
So I'm going to go bust.
And then the guy we were talking about, Shedeur Sanders, the son.
Bust.
You know what?
Bust.
Nope.
Dude, I didn't like him in Colorado.
Nope.
I don't like his decision making. I think he's got an inflated ego. Bust.
I disagree. I think that when your father comes from greatness, his father will not allow him to be somebody that will fail. I think that this is a prime example of Deion Sanders 2.0, where people didn't think he was good, but once that kind of, I think this is great for him. I think that maybe, you know what, who probably planted that? His dad. His dad's probably like, get that shit out there. Hey, he's a slacker. Hey, he ain't working hard. I think that Deion, when you have good genetics and you come from the lineage that he does, I think the quarterback position is tough. It may not be right away, but it may be one of those situations like a year 2 type thing, like a Darnold, where maybe the first go round is a flop, but he sticks around due to his reputation and being a top 10 pick. I think that he'll go and have a good career, and I think he'll be a baller. I think he'll make it so that, hey, you guys all talked that junk on me. You all thought I wasn't good enough. You all thought that the college tape was going to predetermine what I did. No. And I think he's going to bring some swag, and I like the opportunity that he's got just based on his genes. Let's see. It's all going to depend on team, work ethic, and where he ends up. But I think that, I can see where people are concerned because he represents kind of the new age. Like, hey, he could be doing, a Micah Parsons podcast. He could be, being like, man, ROC called himself a weak game that time. He didn't even let me get out 10 times. We said we were going to get me out there. And then all of a sudden he's got to answer all these storms and be like, well, He's going to be like, guys, everybody knows it. Me and my OC are tight. We talk about it all the time. The game plan was to get me rolling, and he didn't. And that's because probably our whole line's got to block better. So it's going to be one of those situations where he might be the bridge between the new age athlete and the old school. We'll see how it plays out over his career. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you think our Buster Baller meter is way off, let us know. If you found a draft crush that you just absolutely want us to scout or talk about on an episode, let us know. We got a couple, about 8 weeks before the draft. The next situation is free agency frenzy. We'll react to that next time, and we'll see how the Lions upgrade. Do they make a splash? Do they do something? Do they pay? No T. Higgins. Some of the guys that you want are gone. They're not going to be available. So, like I said, look for a B+, C- grade range for probably a lot of the signings that the Lions make. And I think that they're going to take a splash for their own guys, Carlton Davis, Derek Barnes, and we'll see what the commitment level is to Levi and Yafatu and others like Kevin Zeitler as well. For the Jock Adams Rosinski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Thank you for this hour of your time. We greatly appreciate it. Like and subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Because I can't wait to talk to you again. Talking Lions football, Red Wings recap, and everything going on in the world of Detroit sports on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.